One of the strangest kinds of pain in life is not being rejected by strangers. It's being quietly overlooked by people who are supposed to know you best. Not always hated, not always openly mistreated. Sometimes it's subtler than that. You're included, but not really. You're invited, but as an afterthought. You're around, but not deeply seen. You're in the family photo, but somehow still outside the emotional frame. And that kind of pain is hard to explain because from the outside, everything can look normal enough. Everybody's at the table, there's food, there's laughter. Your aunt is still bringing that same glass bowl of potato salad like it's a sacred family artifact. Your uncle is still telling the story about the one time he almost bought land in Arizona. On paper, it looks like a family, but inside you feel like a guest who forgot to bring a gift. And if you know this feeling, you know how confusing it is, because nothing dramatic may be happening in the moment. No one is standing on a chair announcing, "We have gathered here today to emotionally exclude Kevin." It's quieter than that. It's the side glances, the inside jokes you weren't inside for, the decisions made without you. The warmth that seems to flow easily between everyone else while you're standing there holding a paper plate and pretending to care about the napkin design. So let me ask you something specific early on. What is one exact family memory when you first realized you felt left out? Not the general feeling, the actual memory. Where were you? At a birthday dinner? In the kitchen? In the car? At a holiday table while somebody was loudly asking who wanted pie and somehow skipping right over your section of the room? Drop that in the comments, because specific memories help people realize they're not imagining this. Now there is a Jung angle here, but don't worry, nothing heavy. Jung believed that families often assign people roles long before they know who those people really are. Here's what this means. Sometimes your family keeps talking to the version of you they decided on years ago, even after you've completely changed. And once you understand that, a lot of this quiet pain starts to make sense. So let's go straight into it. 1. Sometimes you're not left out of the event, you're left out of the warmth. This is the first thing people struggle to explain, because technically you're there. You got the invite, you showed up, nobody locked the door, no one told you to leave. From the outside, it would be easy for someone to say, "What do you mean left out? You were with them." Yes, physically. But being present and being welcomed are not the same thing. Some families are experts at offering logistical inclusion with emotional distance. There's a seat for you at the table, but no one really turns toward you. You're part of the group text, but nobody answers your message. You're invited to the barbecue, but the real conversation happened 3 days earlier without you. You're included, but in the same way a coat on a chair is included, and that hurts because it creates doubt. You start wondering if you're being dramatic, if maybe this is just adulthood, maybe everyone is tired, maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe you're reading into it because cousin Elena always sounds cold, even when she's asking for ketchup, and she still wears those giant sunglasses on her head indoors, like she's one delayed flight away from a personal crisis. But your body notices what your mind tries to minimize. It notices who gets warmth and who gets formality, who gets curiosity and who gets politeness, who gets followed up with and who gets, "So how's work?" And then the person is already looking past you toward the shrimp tray. Jung wrote that the deepest pain often comes not from open conflict, but from disconnection from the human circle. In plain language, being tolerated is not the same as being held. That's one of the hardest truths in family life, because family exclusion often hides under normal-looking moments. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just quietly withholds. And if you felt that, please hear this. You do not need a dramatic story to validate a lonely feeling. Nothing fancy, just honesty. You can be sitting in a full house and still feel emotionally unwitnessed. That's real. And once you notice the lack of warmth, The next thing becomes impossible not to see. The role you got handed in the family may still be stronger than the person you actually became. 2. Families often keep you in an old role long after you've outgrown it. This is where things get really painful. A lot of families do not relate to who you are now. They relate to who you were when the family story was easiest for them. The quiet one, the difficult one, the sensitive one, the helper, the screw-up, the peacemaker, the one who always understands, the one who doesn't need much, the one who will be fine. And once that role is assigned, it can stick to you for years like one of those old name tags that won't come off cleanly and leaves that weird paper fuzz on your shirt. So maybe you grew, maybe you became clearer, calmer, stronger, deeper, funnier, healthier. Maybe you changed your whole life. But then you go home, and somehow you're still treated like the 17-year-old version of yourself who needed approval, stayed quiet, or kept the peace. Your brother Marcus still interrupts you halfway through a sentence while wearing that same zip-up fleece from 2012 that has somehow survived every season and every opinion. Your mother still explains your personality to other people like she's using notes from a file that hasn't been updated since Obama's first term. Your Aunt Denise still talks to you in that careful tone she reserves for you and toddlers, even though you now pay taxes, schedule your own dentist appointments, and have survived things nobody in that room even knows about. That mismatch creates a very particular kind of sorrow. Because now you're not just unseen, you're misseen. And being misseen by family is exhausting, because it makes you feel like you have to fight your own ghost. Jung believed that the persona is the role we wear, but families often try to hand us one too. Plain translation. Sometimes the family version of you is so outdated, it should be archived in a dusty folder next to old landline numbers. And if you're thinking, okay, but maybe they're just used to me, sure, maybe. Don't worry, we are not turning every awkward parent into a villain from an art film. But if years go by and they still refuse to update their image of you, that does damage, because every time you return, you have to decide, do I shrink back into the old role so the room stays comfortable, or do I stay who I am and risk being treated like I've become different? That's not a small tension. That's emotional labor. And once you see the old role clearly, the next pain gets even sharper. Because sometimes the reason you feel left out is that the family has closeness, just not with the real you. 3. Sometimes they love you, but not in a way that reaches you. This one is difficult to admit, because a lot of people feel guilty saying it. They'll say, my family loves me, I know they do. And maybe they do, but love can exist without understanding. Love can exist without safety. Love can exist without emotional skill. Love can exist and still leave you lonely. That's the heartbreak. Some families show love through logistics. They'll feed you. They'll help you move a couch. They'll tell people you're doing great. They'll send you home with leftovers in a margarine container that definitely once held something else and now has 3 layers of mystery on the lid. But they may never ask the question that reaches your actual life. How are you really? What has been hardest for you? What are you carrying? What changed you? What do you need from us now that you never got before? And when that kind of emotional absence repeats long enough, you start to feel loved in theory, but lonely in practice. That sentence matters, so let me give it to you clean. You can be loved in theory and lonely in practice. Somebody should put that in a comment, because this is exactly what many people feel around family. No one is throwing dishes, no one is disowning anybody, but nobody is really reaching you either, and after a while you stop expecting to be reached. You start performing okayness. You keep conversations light. You become easy. You answer with summaries. Yeah, work's fine. Everything's good. Just busy. Because you already know the room has depth for casseroles, weather, cholesterol numbers, and what your cousin's neighbor did with the fence, but not necessarily for your inner life. Jung said that what is not made conscious remains emotionally distant, even in close relationships. Meaning, if a family never learns to talk honestly, love keeps bumping into walls. And that's why the pain can feel so quiet. No major explosion, just a long ache. But if that ache has been with you for years, the next layer explains why it often gets worse during milestones, birthdays, holidays, and all the moments that are supposed to feel like belonging. 4. Family milestones can hurt the most because they expose the gap. This is where many people feel the pain most sharply. Holidays, birthdays, weddings, graduations, Mother's Day brunches where someone is already annoyed before the pancakes arrive, the special occasions. Why do these moments hurt more? Because they come with emotional advertising. They are sold to us as proof of closeness, proof of tradition, proof of belonging, proof that family is this warm circle where everyone feels held and remembered. So when you show up and feel like a side character in your own family story, the contrast becomes brutal. There's your cousin Ryan carving the turkey like he's filming a survival show, still wearing that watch 2 sizes too big for his wrist. There's Aunt Paula saying, "We all need to do this more often," even though she hasn't returned your last 3 calls and once forgot your birthday while posting 14 photos of her basil plant. There's everybody laughing at a memory you were physically present for, but somehow your version of it doesn't exist in the room. That is a special kind of loneliness. Because milestone days magnify emotional truth. If the bond is solid, those moments deepen it. If the bond is shaky, those moments expose it. And this is usually where people start gaslighting themselves. They think, why am I sad? Everyone seems fine. Maybe I'm ungrateful. Maybe I'm expecting too much. No. Sometimes your sadness is simply accurate, not dramatic. Accurate. And here's another one-liner. A full table can still leave one person unfed. That's family pain in one sentence. Jung wrote that rituals can either renew belonging or reveal its absence. Plain translation. Sometimes the holiday doesn't create the hurt. It just puts better lighting on it. So if certain dates feel heavier for you, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means your heart notices the gap between the family moment everyone is pretending to have and the one you're actually living. And once that gap gets named, another truth starts surfacing. Many people who feel left out in their family learn to work for scraps of belonging. 5. Feeling left out. Often turns you into the one who tries too hard. This is one of the most exhausting parts. If you grew up feeling slightly outside the emotional circle, chances are you became very good at managing the vibe. You text first, you remember birthdays, you smooth over tension, you drive farther, you help more, you bring the dessert, you ask the questions, you make sure everybody else is comfortable. Why? Because somewhere inside, there's a quiet hope. Maybe if I'm useful enough, warm enough, easy enough, thoughtful enough, I'll finally feel included. And listen, nothing wrong with being generous. Nothing wrong with being thoughtful. Just one thing to notice. When generosity becomes a strategy for earning your place, it gets heavy. Now, every interaction has invisible stakes. You're not just showing up, you're auditioning for ease. That's why some people leave family gatherings more tired than happy, not because they talk too much, because they manage too much. There's always one person like this. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's the one refilling drinks, carrying folding chairs, remembering who can't eat onions, and pretending not to mind that nobody asked how they've been. Meanwhile, cousin Lily, who brought exactly 1 bag of ice and somehow wants praise like she donated a kidney, is sitting there scrolling and calling herself emotionally drained. That imbalance becomes its own pain. Because when you're the one who overfunctions, you start feeling invisible and resentful at the same time. Jung believed that what we do compulsively often hides an unmet need. In plain language, sometimes the person doing the most is still hoping to finally feel chosen. That doesn't make you pathetic. It makes you human. So give yourself permission here. Nothing perfect. Just notice it. If you are always the one working hardest to keep family closeness alive, that tells you something. And it leads straight into the next wound, which is maybe the quietest one of all, the grief of realizing they may never see the effort the way you hoped they would. 6. Part of the pain is grieving the family you keep hoping they'll become. This is the part people don't talk about enough. Sometimes the deepest pain is not just what your family is. It's what they are not what they did today, what they have never really become. The mother who never learned to ask deeper questions, the father who can fix a sink in 12 minutes but cannot sit in one honest conversation for 3. The sibling who talks to everyone else with warmth and somehow becomes a customer service agent with you. The aunt who says family is everything and still manages closeness like it's an exclusive club with confusing membership rules and a lot of floral blouses. When you feel left out of your own family, you often keep carrying a private fantasy. Maybe one day they'll finally get it. Maybe one day they'll notice. Maybe one day there will be that conversation, that apology, that softening, that genuine reaching. And maybe sometimes there is. But often, healing begins when you stop waiting for a room to become what it has repeatedly shown you it cannot yet become. That's hard. Because it feels like betrayal to tell the truth, like disloyalty, like giving up. But sometimes it's not giving up. Sometimes it's grieving honestly. Jung said we suffer most from illusions we are unwilling to release. Plain translation, false hope can keep a wound open longer than reality ever did. And please don't hear this harshly. This is not stop loving your family. Nothing cold like that. It's simply this. You're allowed to stop expecting emotional depth from people who still panic at emotional weather. You are allowed to stop waiting for tenderness from people who only know logistics. You are allowed to let the truth be disappointing without forcing it to become prettier. That honesty hurts, but it also calms. And once that calm starts to enter, something surprising happens. You begin to realize that belonging may not begin with them fully changing. It may begin with you no longer abandoning yourself in their presence. 7. Healing starts when you stop treating your loneliness like a character flaw. This is where things begin to turn. Because if you felt left out in your own family for a long time, you may have built a whole private story around it. Maybe I'm too much, too sensitive, too different, too intense, too quiet, too emotional, too difficult to understand, too something. But loneliness is not always proof that something is wrong with you. Sometimes it is proof that the environment never learned your language. That matters, because one of the cruelest things family pain does is make you personalize a collective limitation. A room can be emotionally shallow, and you'll still walk away blaming your depth. A family can be avoidant, and you'll still wonder whether your needs are unreasonable. A group can be bonded by habit instead of intimacy, and you'll still think your loneliness means you're defective. No. Sometimes you are simply the one who noticed the emptiness first. There's always that one person in a family, the one who starts seeing the pattern, the one who feels the awkward silence after the funny comment, the one who notices how no one asks real questions, the one who goes home and sits in the car for a minute before driving away because the whole thing felt weirdly sad, even though there were deviled eggs and a Bluetooth speaker and Uncle Ron's annual rant about air fryers. That person is not broken. That person is awake. And here is the line I really want to leave you with. Being left out did not make you lesser. It made you lonelier. That is different. Very different. Jung believed healing begins when we stop identifying with the role that wounded us. Here's a plain translation. You do not have to become the outsider forever just because that was the seat they kept handing you. So start small, nothing fancy, just one honest shift. Maybe you stop over-explaining yourself. Maybe you leave earlier. Maybe you stop chasing closeness where there has only been politeness. Maybe you build deeper belonging outside the family system. Maybe you let your sadness be real without turning it into self-accusation. That is healing, not dramatic, just true. And now that we've walked through all of it, let's bring this home. So what is the quiet pain of feeling left out of your own family? It's being included in the logistics, but not in the warmth. It's being trapped in an old role that no longer fits. It's being loved in a way that doesn't quite reach you. It's having milestones expose the gap. It's trying too hard for crumbs of belonging. It's grieving the family you kept hoping they would become. And it's carrying loneliness that was never actually proof that you were the problem. That's the pain. And if this feels heavy, that's because it is heavy. But it's also strangely freeing when you finally name it. Because once you name it, you stop arguing with your own experience. You stop forcing every gathering to mean more than it did. You stop mistaking proximity for closeness. You stop blaming yourself for a hunger that was never fully fed. And maybe most importantly, you stop calling your loneliness drama just because nobody else in the family learned how to describe it. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is tell the truth gently, not to punish anyone, not to become bitter, just to stop disappearing inside a story that keeps leaving you out. So let me leave you with one last specific question for the comments. What is the exact family moment you still remember because it made you feel outside the circle? Not the whole history, just one moment. The car ride, the holiday dinner, the comment, the silence, the photo, the invitation that came last. That one. And if this spoke to you, comment, "I was present, but not included." Or, "A full table can still leave one person unfed." Both are true. Both are real.